I'll just take a brief moment and introduce everyone. This is Dr. Joseph Shaw from Electrical and Computer Engineering, and this is Ilse-Mari Lee from Honors, the Director of Honors here at MSU, and then our last one is Dr. Christiansen from the College of Business. So if you guys just want to take a moment, we'll just start with you, Dr. Shaw, and kind of move down and just kind of give some brief history as to what you do here at MSU and kind of your main duties, and then we'll open it up for more specific questions to panelists.
Well, and I apologize, I don't have a very strong voice today. I kind of got a little bug in my chest, so I hope you can hear me okay. I am not entirely sure what I'm supposed to say here, but I'll give you a little bit of a rundown and then we can take care of the rest of it with questions. I am a professor in the electrical engineering department and affiliate professor in physics, kind of have a foot in both worlds. And I also am the director of what's called the Optical Technology Center, which is a interdisciplinary umbrella, I like to think of it as. It's kind of an organization that takes in all of the people across campus that do work in the field of optics, which is the science of light and its uses in practical ways. And so that includes people in engineering, people in physics, people in math, and also in chemistry. So my own research and teaching areas are primarily in the areas of, surprise, surprise, optics. I teach courses on optical design, how to design telescopes and camera lenses and things like that. I'm teaching a course right now that is talking about my research area, which is optical remote sensing. So using optical sensors, optical devices to measure the natural world around us. A lot of my research is done for the purpose of studying climate and weather. And so you can blame me, I guess, for the snow outside.
Joe. Very powerful.
I like snow, you know, so this is good. And one of my passions is photography of natural optical phenomena, colors in the sky, auroras, rainbows, things like that. So a lot of my research, I try to find ways to connect my photography addiction to my research activities. So that's kind of an overview of what I do.
My name is Ilse-Mari Lee. I direct the University Honors Program. I was born and raised in South Africa and studied music at the University of the Witwatersrand. It was a fantastic university and really opened my eyes. And it was just one of those universities where you arrive and it's very similar to MSU in the sense that it's a research university, but with just tremendous opportunities and tremendous vistas that became available to me as an undergraduate there. And then, similar to what you will be doing now, graduate school opportunities became available to me, and again, more vistas opened. So I hold a doctorate from the University of Arizona, and MSU is my first teaching position. I came here 20 years ago, and I always laugh about that and say I was 10 when I started.
I forgot we have that in common.
Yeah.
I have a PhD from Arizona as well.
That's
so,
right,
yeah.
That's right. And it's being a faculty member as well. It's just being a continuation of those vistas that keep opening. I'm a composer. I love to conduct. I love to explore music technology, and I'm a film composer as well. So it's I've never stopped learning, and now in the position of the director of the honors program, I've continued to open doors now for students. I can see myself 20 years ago, and it's just wonderful to advise students on graduate schools, but also for major scholarships, as the Truman, the Rhodes, the Mitchell, wonderful opportunities for students. So I would be very interested in your questions in that regard. But it's been a wonderful journey, and it's fun to see our students go forth as well.
I'm Ann Christiansen, and I've been at Montana State for 8 years now. This is my 8th year. I was on the faculty at Portland State University for 13 years prior to that. And I teach in the College of Business and do research in that area as well. And anyway, my area is accounting, specifically the tax area. And I teach undergraduate and graduate tax courses. 60% of my responsibility at MSU is in the teaching area, 30% in research, and 10% in service. And on the research side, I do research related to taxpayer behavior and compliance issues. And so I'm interested in how people make decisions about whether to comply or not comply with the tax system.
Timely.
And then on the service side, I run the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program at Montana State University. And so we do income tax returns for low-income individuals. So I have a group of students who I've trained here. And we also do tax returns for the international students and international employees at MSU as well. So we help on that side. And anyway, I guess I'll just leave it for questions.
Great.
I have formulated a few questions, but I do want to open it up to you as the students. I mean, this panel is here to answer your questions about potentially finding jobs in academia, doing research in academia, and also, like Dr. Christiansen was talking about, the service component and developing this side stuff that is aside from the research and the teaching, which is a huge component of the job. Are there any immediate questions or thoughts that you guys would like to get out? Again, a couple of our panelists are leaving early, so if you do have questions, let's start.
I apologize for having to leave early. I had other commitments come up, so.
I have volunteer income taxes.
Yeah.
We have clients coming and people, maybe some of you who are coming tonight for tax help.
I should say that I'm going to do my taxes, but I'm not. So.
Yeah.
All right, questions. Come on, folks.
I'm from computer science department, and I was thinking of joining the academia as my profession. I mean, to be a professor or in a teaching. So what should be the necessary things? Is it only publishing papers are important, or other things are necessary, like experience in a research lab or something like that? I'm a PhD student.
Well, can I start with
Please
that
do.
since I'm
Please
kind
do.
of on the geeky side? If you're a PhD student, you will get research experience, obviously. You'll become an expert in some narrow discipline of research. And so that's good. That's necessary. So that's the first thing you have to have is make sure, if you want to be a faculty member, I don't know if the camera was picking up the sound or not, but her question was essentially what's important for her to do to prepare for a possible academic career in computer science. So you need a PhD, and you need to have some ideas about what kind of research you might want to conduct. And in addition to that, I would say it's also very, very helpful if you can find some opportunities to get experience in teaching. When we interview faculty members for our department, we like to look for that experience, and very often we don't see a lot of teaching experience. So if you can get a chance to work with another professor to help co-teach a class, or possibly even teach a whole class yourself, or some kind of experience in teaching really does help. And it also helps you because then you get an idea of whether you really like teaching or not.
Yeah.
But you need to know how to do research and publish papers. That's definitely true. But you also should get some experience in teaching.
Thank you.
But the only thing that I might add to that is for university faculty, it is so important also to be, certainly to have the depth of your discipline and to have research experience and teaching experience, but then also to be well-rounded. So be sure to read actively, to be aware of issues of the day, so that when you get to the interview stage, that you can display breadth and depth. So just a total person, a person that thinks about issues of the day, can see where their discipline fits into the total picture and into this little universe of a university.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that is helpful even as a doctoral student is to become involved in a professional organization. In my case, I've been involved in the American Tax Association, which is a group of professors that teach and do research in the tax area. And they have conferences regularly, and at those conferences, you meet other people who are active researchers, and you meet other doctoral students too, so you can kind of commiserate, you're in the same boat together. But you also often can find people who you have shared interests with that can help on the research side. So you can find people, potential co-authors there. And then in my professional group, they also have sessions related to teaching and things, how you can share teaching materials as well. And so I really gained a lot from, you know, being involved in my professional organization. And I know they have them in every discipline. You know, it's not unique to
No,
absolutely.
That's a good
by
point.
any means.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And for networking as
Helps a
well.
lot, I guess.
Yeah, and job announcements.
I don't want to, okay. I'm in the film department, I'm a graduate student in the film department, and something that I have sometimes heard in conversation with faculty is that there is a real tension between them wanting to be filmmakers and their responsibilities as faculty and teaching, their teaching responsibilities. So I guess my question is, how much do you get to do what you want to do? Like, do you do the research to inform the teaching and you really want to be teachers, or do you teach to support yourself and allow yourself to do the research that you really want to do? And that, how do you balance it if it's leans one way or the other?
Since I'm in the art, shall I maybe go?
Sure.
It is a very difficult question. And for instance, you know, I'm a cellist and I have to find practice time. I'm a composer and I have to find you know, it's just very, very difficult. But still, I would not compose the music and play the way that I do that I didn't have the opportunity to teach. I'm learning and growing as I am teaching. So I would say, certainly it's a difficult balance, and it's very important that you go into this and know that, yes, it's going to be difficult and you have to manage time very well, but my teaching has so informed my art. It's not only informed my art, it's made me be aware of new developments in technology or in new literature written for the cello that I would not have been aware of. It feels to me much more as though I'm on the cutting edge and I'm contributing to what is happening in my art. And so where the industry really follows universities, it's really wonderful to be in that avant-garde where you are experimenting, where you are not being prescribed by a director or producer, this is the film that you're going to make. In the university setting, you are making the film that you want to artistically do. So freedom of expression, academic freedom is huge. So to me, the compromise of having very limited time is absolutely dwarfed by the possibility of really doing explorative research and really pushing the medium and the art where we want to go. So I hope that helps. And you know, you can always tell, I know in the film department, I know a lot of the faculty, but think of the faculty there that light up when they're in the classroom. And those are the faculty whose films are really exciting to see. It's always a parallel to me. A person who is not interested so very much in teaching or something, you know, it's just, there's an energy thing that you miss. So, great question. I hope I answered a little bit.
It's a continual struggle, though. In all honesty, that's one of the most difficult things about an academic job is finding a balance between those things. You know, that's, and I smile when I listen to Ilse because she just loves to teach and she loves to play music and she loves all these things. And you'll find that about academics. We love things that we do. We tend to be pretty passionate about things, but it is difficult because you get the reality of, gosh, I have these classes to teach and I have all these ideas I want to pursue. I spent 12 years at a federal research lab before I came here. And so I've tasted the side where it was just pure research, and that was fun. And I wouldn't give it up for anything. It was a great experience. But there is a dimension that was missing. There's a dimension that's really very enjoyable to interact with the students. And obviously there was some part of me that wanted that, or else I wouldn't have come here. And so you have to weigh those things. And it does become a very challenging, continual, ongoing task of balancing the time. So yeah, it is. It's a challenge.
It's totally true. There's lots of tension between the teaching and research side, and it is really in the time issue. And I find that the largest share of my research I really get done during the summertime when I have a block of time and I can just focus on work just completely, you know, and get my head around it. But then during the school year when I'm teaching, then I have time to kind of nurture those projects along. So, but as far as like collecting data analysis and that stuff, the largest share of that for me occurs during the summertime because you have the classes to teach and the students are going to show up, and I mean, I can't show up not prepared for class, you know. I mean, you have all the expectations of students, and if You know, you just can't walk in not prepared. That just, you know, isn't part of the contract. I feel like, you know, I mean, well, we have a commitment, you know, to the students as well as the research side of things. But the research really is the currency of the profession. You know, if you don't have publications, you won't end up getting tenured. You'll have difficulties finding a job. You know, publishing articles is what enables you to find jobs at other universities if you decide that you want to move to another place. And so, I mean, it's not a part that you can let go. But a lot of times, too, while you're teaching, I think it's just your part of it is ideas come for research projects. And because, like, in my area, and I think it's true actually in all areas, things are always changing. You know, I have Congress, I can rely on them, and nothing will ever stay the same with them out there. And so, as a result, there's always new issues that come up that then suggest new research projects as well. So the teaching helps me to stay current in the field so that then I can collect ideas to use then on the research side. So, I mean, I think that there's, you know, a real meshing between the teaching and the research side. But, you know, I mean, it's not, in my teaching, I'm not presenting like statistical analysis of taxpayers' behavior, you know, I mean, because the students are preparing to go into the field of accounting and actually do tax work there. So, you know, there's differences with regards to that, but I think the teaching helps with the research as well.
Great question.
Do you find in your experience of being on hiring committees or through your own job search that it's pretty standard for an applicant to request some kind of release time from a course during their first year or something, especially if they're coming straight out of graduate school, to sort of continue with some loose ends on their dissertation? Is that something that you've seen as becoming pretty standard?
Where should we start?
Well, I think a part of it depends on what university you end up at. Like in the business field, if you go to a program that also has a doctoral program, a lot of times the way that they'll be set up is that you'll have a semester to do research, and then they'll concentrate your teaching in another semester. So they really give you a lot of research time. You know, but like MSU in the College of Business, we don't have a PhD program, so there's more emphasis on the teaching. And so, whereas they'll try to minimize your preparation, so you don't have, you know, you're not always prepping new courses over and over again, which is incredibly time consuming. You know, that can help a lot to minimize the preps. And then they do give one course release for untenured faculty in the College of Business. It's kind of how the things work there.
It's a little bit different in the arts because the research funding is quite a bit less, and so usually departments in the humanities are pretty desperate to have the teaching faculty in there. And so I've often seen two cases where faculty have come in and they were in the final stages of their doctorate and they didn't get release time, and it was really difficult for them to get that degree done. I've actually seen it once in a letter of hire that for the third year review the doctorate needed to be completed, and it was very difficult for that faculty member given the teaching load. So it depends on the field to have research time out. In the humanities and the arts, to have a research semester is a little bit difficult. It's just because of funding.
I would echo comments similar to what these two have said. In the sciences and engineering, it's of course a much bigger business. You know, the research is partly about bringing in money, and so you can't bring in money with you typically on day one. And so if you're coming right out of school at least, and so it's pretty common in science and engineering fields to negotiate a package that includes what's called startup funding, which is money to buy stuff to set up your lab or to set up whatever you need to get working. Quite often it includes some support for one or maybe two graduate students to get something done while you're off doing all these other things, and set up your lab and get your research ideas rolling. And one of the first things that you need to do in that field is write proposals to get money to come in. And so what we try to do is give these new faculty members a deal where they have at least a reduced teaching rate to have some kind of reduction of teaching for the first year at least. At MSU, we're not blessed with the resources to continue that for very long, so we usually pull it off for about a year and then we hit them full force. But I have seen a lot of other universities where they do kind of what you described, that if you're untenured all the way up until you receive tenure, you have a reduced teaching load. And that's pretty nice if you can get that deal, but because it's all about time. So. Those are good questions. Any others?
So I know in the sciences, before you get a faculty position, you're going to have to do a postdoc or maybe several postdocs these days. What's the comparable situation in the humanities?
Well, you know, that's a very question. It differs from department to department, from discipline to discipline. But I think the first thing that I would highly recommend is to get a graduate teaching assistantship in the humanities. It's very important for you, maybe to continue your research, but if you could get experience teaching, it'll be such an important thing for you to get your foot in the door. And if you think of the entry-level courses that people are going to be teaching in humanities, if you're as flexible and as marketable as possible, that would be very, very helpful. When I started in the music department, my teaching assignment is so far removed from what I'm doing right now and from the courses that I taught at the end of the tenure. It was just that when I was finished with my doctorate, there were a myriad of things that I could teach in a music department. Everything from music education to oral skills and to harmony. And so be as diverse as possible and get teaching experience under your belt. That's what my suggestion would be.
Well, I guess the question is, do you think that before you get between grad school and getting a faculty position, are you probably going to have to do some, like be a lecturer or something?
Absolutely, absolutely. And to give you an example, my stepson is an anthropologist and he's at the University of Boulder right now. He finished his PhD and for the past 2 years he's been a lecturer, which means he's continuing his research, but he's also getting classroom experience. Those evaluations are really, really good, and I think it is just a question of time for him to step into a larger role. So he's building up experience.
I'd like to follow up on that, actually, even though I'm not in the humanities. You made the comment that it's really common to have one or more postdocs in the sciences. I think that's generally true. In engineering fields, though, just in case there's some of you out there that are wondering about that, that's much less common. It's much more common to go straight from a PhD to an academic position. A lot of our faculty, just for whatever reason, have come actually from other non-academic jobs. So like myself, I was at a federal research lab. We have people that spent time in industry. In engineering, that's a little more common. There aren't typically as many industrial positions for some of the pure sciences. And so the postdoc tends to be really, really common in those fields. But I wanted to go back to what you were asking actually earlier too, that it just occurred to me that I think none of us answered part of your question, which was, you mentioned using some of that startup time, if you will, to finish up some of your own PhD work. In my field, or fields related to my field, that would be highly unusual.
Not necessarily finishing up, you know, things directly related
but maybe
to your
publishing
PhD.
things.
But yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, when you finish your PhD, there's always sort of lingering future work questions.
Absolutely.
And so that's sort of what I was getting at.
Okay.
Yeah. So assuming the PhD would be
Because Ilse did mention a case where somebody was actually on the faculty trying to finish their own
Absolutely.
PhD. That's a situation that I would caution you against getting yourself into if you can avoid it. It's tough to be a faculty member and finish your own degree. It's really tough.
It's a huge problem. I would recommend really staying at your, graduate school and not going, if you weren't, and just because I've seen people just get so caught up because of everything, all the new demands you have that really are more than a full-time job to begin with. And then you put on top of that trying to do a dissertation, finishing up, and it is just a killer.
It can be done. I know people have done it, but it's not easy.
My best friend's trying to do it, so I mean.
It's not easy, but
if at all possible, stay at your doctoral school and finish, you'll be,
I agree.
it'll make life so much better.
It will.
And you know, well, I mean, because then if you're working on, your papers that you're trying to get published, instead of, trying to satisfy your dissertation committee and the things that need to be done with your research, I mean, you still, on the other side, when you're trying to publish your papers, then you have to please editors and reviewers, on the other side. And so in trying to please all of that many people, it's just essentially overwhelming.
Yeah.
More stress than anybody should have.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so in the business fields, it's much more common, it's much more like the engineering as far as like postdocs. It just isn't a common event at all. People often will have 1 or 2 publications by the time they finish up their PhD already, just coming out the door, which is a huge help to them, in getting started. But there's such a demand in the business field right now and a shortage because people have the other option of going, if you want to make big bucks, you don't go into academia, I mean, it's a reality, especially in the business field, because there's places where you can make a lot more money. So anyway, so there's actually a shortage, and there's, with the projections of people retiring and all, you get a PhD in business and you demonstrate that you can teach and do research, you're not going to have any troubles finding a job. You'll have multiple job offers.
I have a question about this tenure issue. Since I'm an international student, it's kind of confusing. A couple months ago, I read on the news that one of the professors killed her committee members, tenure committee members, because they didn't grant her. So is it that much important? Is it that much important in our job searches after completing PhD, tenure track jobs or tenure positions? It's really hard to understand for me.
Where are you from, if I may ask?
I'm Turkey.
Turkey.
I would hope that tenure isn't such a big deal that we would kill people over it. But it is a very big deal. I mean, it's a career, it's a make or break your career kind of situation if you're in a tenure track job. If you really want to make a career in academia, that's the path you need to eventually get on, I would argue. You could spend a whole career being a lecturer or something like that, but you're not going to make very much money and you're not going to have very much advancement. So,
well, someone joked to me that if you didn't get tenure, you got a raise because they continue to raise the salaries of people in the business disciplines, and so that when you got a new job, a new tenure track position, you'd probably get more money than what you'd been hired at your original institution where they didn't grant you tenure.
I thought you were going to say that then you go out to industry and get a raise.
Oh, well, that would be the other option. So.
Now, a lot of universities won't hire you if you didn't get tenure somewhere else, so that's not always an option.
No, that isn't always an option.
We had one person interview for one of our jobs that we realized he was leaving because he didn't get tenure at where he was, and he didn't get very far with us because that's kind of a warning sign. So yeah, tenure is a pretty big deal. It's
And it was news to me as an international student too, because where I was from in South Africa, that was not necessarily the norm. But now I understand why. It is to protect academic freedom. And that is very important. But today I was in a meeting where there were some liberal arts colleges that are moving towards hiring faculty on an just adjunct basis and not with tenure. And so it's a hot issue because it's very, very expensive to invest in a person. I mean, it literally represents millions of dollars. I heard a number once and what a lifetime tenure award means. If that person is at the university for 25 or 30 years, it's a lot. So it's very significant. I understand why it's there. And it's difficult. I know that a lot of our young women have asked today, it's very difficult for women to get tenure because if you balance going through the tenure process, getting the research done, and thinking of childbearing years, it is really very, very, very difficult for women to do. So just to be aware of it, and our university has made great strides in making it possible for women to attain tenure, and with family leave and so forth.
Thanks.
We've had some good success in the College of Business, so hiring some people who didn't get tenure but had quite a few research projects in process. So, and they may have only published one or two things, a few things, 2 or 3 things, and so not enough to get tenure, and not enough to get tenure at MSU either. But they had so many things in the works that just given a few more years that they've been successful then in getting those articles published, and then obtaining tenure here.
Interesting.
And as you go from university to university, you might be 3 years towards your tenure at this university, and you go to another university, and if they really are interested in hiring you, they'll give you those years to credit towards your tenure at the new university. So you could bargain like that.
How do you navigate that situation where if you're at a university and for some reason you want to leave that tenure track position and seek another tenure track position? I've heard that it's sort of a minefield to navigate in terms of letting the people at your current institution know that you're leaving and how you get the appropriate letters of recommendation and all these things when you don't really want them to know that you're leaving ahead of time, because if for some reason you don't find a job, then that could sabotage you with your original university down the line.
Can I answer that with some of my dear colleagues in the music department? We hired, universities such as MSU will often hire faculty right out of PhD programs. And they were just wonderful colleagues. And when they came to me at the end of the second year and asked that they would like recommendations to go to this other university, my first reaction was, this is a great step in your career. I was certainly sad for us, but as a colleague, I knew this was the next step for them. And so I had no hesitation in writing those letters, and they have gone on. So the bottom line is, again, collegiality. And for all of you budding academicians, or what the word might be, I had a great friend define collegiality to me one day. Collegiality is not hanging out at parties and visiting and da-da-da-da and all of that. Collegiality is when you take a real interest in the career and in the research projects of your friends. And you say to them, how can I help you to make this a successful career? How can I help you get to the institution that you need to be? So that's the frame.
Can you see why I like to work with Ilse?
Well, it's interesting because I've heard the exact opposite happen.
People are people, right? And
Yeah.
That's it.
Some people are collegial, some are not.
Right.
But generally speaking, professionals will behave professionally. And, that's one thing I think that is not understood enough about academics, is how broad and how large our world is. They think that, we're just a bunch of people here at MSU. Bozeman is our world. Today, who have I talked to on the phone? People in Arizona, people in Alaska, people in Hawaii, we emailed people in Japan and Europe. My colleagues are all around the world, and so it really is a big network. And so when a colleague leaves this institution, or when I left my former job, for example, I work with those people regularly still. The key, I think, is to be professional about it and to let them know that this is nothing against you. It's an opportunity. When I told them I was leaving, I said, I love living here. I love working here. I want to continue working with you. I have an opportunity to go somewhere where I really want to be. And they understood. And most people will behave professionally that way. And then it'll help build your pool of colleagues.
To create goodwill wherever you go. I mean, it's one of the key pieces of that, because you just never know when you'll find yourself working again with somebody else. And so I think don't burn bridges. There's nothing to be gained by that. And so wherever you can create goodwill, and if you help others along, that you'll find other people will be willing to help you along as well.
And for what it's worth, you don't usually have to tell anybody until you are a finalist. Usually when you're a finalist for a position, that's when they will want to contact references. So Dr. Fox back there, for example, I remember when you came to Bozeman, we called your references, but only after you were visiting here. And so at that point, he had to fess up that, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. It was Northern Arizona you were at, right? Yeah. So, but it's common for people to leave and to move around. So nobody gets too worked up about that. We're sad to lose good people, but it happens. I've got just a few minutes more that I can stay, so if you want to ask me something, you better jump on it. I apologize for that.
Well, I'm the same way, the other 5 minute.
Can you explain the tenure process? 5 minutes or less?
Sure. Of getting tenure or applying for tenure?
Oh.
Tenure, typically, when you're hired, you are hired in a tenure track position. You're hired typically as an assistant professor. That's the entry-level position. And you will be in that position for 6 years. In your 7th year, you apply for tenure. And during those 6 years, it is your job to teach successfully, conduct some research successfully. In my kind of field, that means obtaining some research funding and getting some students and getting them graduated, and publishing papers and convincing your colleagues around the world that you are a viable professional in this field. And then when you apply for tenure, at least a portion of your paperwork will go to colleagues around the world for evaluation. It's not just a committee at MSU that looks at it. And then they write a letter evaluating you as a colleague in their field, and then that goes to the committee at MSU who makes the final decision. But the process of applying is as hard as earning tenure. It's multiple stages. You have a department committee, a college committee, a university committee, these external reviews. So it's a very big process. It takes about a year. Your whole 7th year is spent being reviewed.
Well, one of the plus factors of getting involved in a professional organization then is people get to know you. And so when you're looking for external reviewers, usually you suggest some people, but then the committee is also going to pick some people who aren't on your list of reviewers. But at least the people on your list, it'll be people that you know in the area. And often you'll have a chance to get acquainted like with people who are journal editors and those kinds of things that are, sort of the ideal people to have on, doing the external reviews, because if they recommend you for tenure and they're the editor of a journal, that's shown that already they have a good deal of insight into research in the field and all. And so those sorts of things can be very helpful. And so that it's just not a name they've never heard or never seen before when you're going up for tenure. At least I found that to be really helpful.
Sure. And there are a couple of steps. From assistant professor, the 3rd year you'll have a retention review. And
that's true.
Yeah, and so a committee will give you feedback on your work, and if there's a red flag, if you need to step up on the research or improve teaching, that'll be the time. And then 2 years later, you can go up for promotion to associate professor. Many faculty retire at the level of associate professor, and then you can, and with tenure, and then later you can go up for professor. And in each level of the reviews, all of us have served on these committees, I know that, each level is charged with a separate review, an independent review. So the department committee might have a completely different verdict, so to speak, than the college committee or so forth. I've served on the university committee, and the independent review, I really came from that after 3 years on that committee, believing that committees really, really work, because you can determine whether it was just one person who had a kind of an axe to grind or something, but in the grand scheme of things, this was just a little blip. It really didn't matter. Look at all these. So it's a system that works. I really was encouraged by it. I thought this really works. And the peer review, I think, is very important. The people that review tenure cases are faculty members like you will be. They've been through it. They understand. They understand the commitments of your time. And they will be represented on the university committee from each of the colleges. So it's not as though there's a person that does not understand what research means on the cello. What does that mean? And so it's a hard one to understand. So it's interesting. It works. It's a good system, and my experience here at MSU was that it was very fair.
And one part of it too, when they send out the request to be evaluated by external reviewers, they send along with it what the Montana State University tenure requirements are. So that the reviewers are charged with evaluating your work in terms of MSU standards, not in terms of their standards at their school, which is extremely helpful. So you don't have to worry about, like, if you have an external reviewer who's at a doctoral granting school in the business field, where we don't have that here, their research expectations would be higher than what the research expectations would be at Montana State, because of the time and, you know, the different requirements of the school. So the reviewers are asked to evaluate you based upon the standards of your school, which is really good. And I mean, I think that's one of the things, though, too, in looking for a job, is to make sure that when you, that you take a job where the tenure standards are realistic with the time that they give you. So that, because there are some schools that have research standards that are unrealistic given what the teaching requirements are. You know, if the teaching requirements are so consuming that you really have very little time to do research, and they're expecting you to publish in what we often refer to as like A-level journals and have extensive publications there, you know, that's just not going to happen if you're at a teaching school. So you need to make sure that their expectations match with what the tenure requirements are and the time, you know, that they give you for your job.
I apologize, but I'm going to have to go now, Carla.
I'm the other one who's going to be.
But I wish you luck and good times in grad school.
If you have questions, you can send emails too. That's totally okay.
Ilse, I hate to bail.
I know. Thank you, guys.
Nice to meet you.
I wonder, Carl, shouldn't you come up here with me?
You want to just continue?
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
That's an excellent idea.
Thank
I'll see you in a little week.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate it, Joe. It's really wonderful for the students.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Great. And we'll be in the recital hall. We have lots of capabilities. So, thank you.
Sure, I do have one suggestion for you all, and I think Joe.
You have something to say.
I think Joe would agree with me. And my background is in the sciences, so I'll take over for the science side as well.
The geek chair.
And that is that you apply for any fellowship or funding opportunity that you know of or can find or you can get help finding, and that you sit down with your major advisor or someone on your committee or another faculty member and write a proposal for doing research. Because the art of writing proposals and seeking grants and contracts is a skill that you're going to have if you're going into academia. And it's really just a way of selling something. So even if you end up, I worked in industry after a doctoral degree for 8 years, and I used that skill as well because I essentially wrote a proposal to justify my job in the program that I was running. So I would encourage you to, and we'd be happy to work with you in our office to do that, but the best thing you can do is sit down with your advisor or another faculty member. And it doesn't matter what discipline you are. You can be in music, you can be in art, you can be in science, engineering. There are fellowships, there are opportunities out there. And even if you don't get it, it's okay.
It's the process.
The process and understanding the process, putting a budget together, knowing what the Office of Sponsored Programs is all about is really invaluable, and it's something you'll never regret the time and effort that you spent doing it. So I would really encourage, I can't say how strongly I encourage that, because it's really a skill that you're going to have to know, regardless.
And it's in the arts too. I'm looking at a filmmaker. You know, we have to learn how to write those proposals and those grants and come up with a budget, and that's a great way to thrive in a university setting in the arts as well.
More questions? Be brave.
Kind of looking at academia in the broader sense, and especially like Montana's needs for community colleges and tribal colleges, I mean, I don't know if you guys have any experience with that, or what it takes to that, or what opportunities are there, anything that you want to touch base on that.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that there should be ample opportunity for a junior faculty member or an entry faculty lines at community colleges. And, you know, again, it is just the way I would explore. I would meet faculty, I would look at the offerings at the other universities and other colleges. But, and then also, don't forget online learning. You might explore creating an online course, just be creative. I think part of what we have to do is kind of imagine different roles for us, different opportunities, and come up with a unique approach to teaching or combining your research. We just have honest funding for our students to be involved in an institute called the Wild Rockies Field Institute. And this is a group of young faculty, similar to you, that have started the summer project, summer courses for students to be enrolled in, and they're kayaking in Alaska, and they're studying ecology and wildlife preservation. It's just, you kind of have to think out of the box a little bit. So this is an independent organization, so think big, and I would certainly explore, and I think our other colleges, and especially with President Cruzado's initiative, we really are getting a sense that we're part of a multi-campus university. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Just be creative.
You're